the brokers who controlled silence. They did not shout orders or command fleets. They spoke softly, if at all, yet their presence could halt a deal, ignite a market, or erase fortunes overnight. In a city obsessed with information, these brokers discovered something far more powerful than knowledge itself: the ability to control what was not said. London's financial world was growing louder by the day. Prices traveled quickly. Rumors moved faster. Coffee houses buzzed with speculation from dawn until dusk. In this environment, information seemed abundant, but abundance created a new scarcity: certainty. And into that gap stepped those who understood that silence, carefully placed, could shape outcomes more decisively than noise. To understand why this mattered, we must return to a moment when markets began reacting not just to events, but to expectations. A delayed shipment, a postponed vote, an unconfirmed report. These absences of information carried weight. They created hesitation, and hesitation, when timed correctly, became leverage. The reveal began when certain intermediaries realized they could profit not by spreading news, but by withholding it. Brokers positioned themselves between buyers and sellers, lenders and borrowers, merchants and officials. They learned who needed information urgently and who could afford to wait. Then they controlled the flow. A pause here, a delay there. Silence became a tool. At first, this seemed harmless. After all, discretion had always been part of negotiation. But as markets grew more sensitive, these quiet pauses began to move prices. A deal delayed suggested doubt. An answer withheld implied danger. Entire markets shifted based on what failed to arrive. Soon, these brokers were no longer passive messengers. They were architects of uncertainty. By deciding when information surfaced, and when it didn't, they shaped perception itself. Confidence rose or fell not on facts, but on timing. London was entering a phase where power belonged not to those who spoke loudest, but to those who mastered silence. And the city had yet to grasp just how fragile a market becomes when information is treated as a weapon. The breaking strain emerged when silence stopped being subtle and began shaping outcomes too large to ignore. A series of stalled deals, delayed confirmations, and unanswered inquiries converged at once, freezing entire sections of the market. Merchants waited. Lenders hesitated. Prices drifted without anchor. The city felt suspended, caught between action and paralysis. At the center of it all were the brokers who controlled the pauses. Their influence, once dispersed and deniable, now appeared concentrated. When silence persisted, markets assumed the worst. When it lifted suddenly, prices lurched. Volatility increased not because fundamentals had changed, but because perception had been bent repeatedly out of shape. Trust began to fracture. Merchants accused brokers of choosing winners by withholding information selectively. Smaller traders felt excluded from a game they could not even see. Larger houses, once beneficiaries of discretion, grew uneasy as silence turned unpredictable. The tool that had once provided leverage now threatened stability. Officials attempted intervention, but found themselves constrained by the nature of the problem. No false statements existed. No explicit manipulation could be proven. Silence left no fingerprints. Yet its effects were undeniable. Entire markets had begun reacting to timing rather than truth. The conflict intensified when a major transaction collapsed after critical information arrived too late to prevent losses. Fingers pointed. Accusations flew. Investigations followed, but uncovered nothing actionable. Only a pattern of delays, omissions, and carefully calibrated quiet. The absence of wrongdoing became the wrongdoing. As panic simmered, brokers themselves felt pressure. Their power depended on trust in their discretion. But as suspicion spread, every pause was reinterpreted as manipulation. Silence lost its neutrality. It became threatening. Clients demanded immediacy. Rivals rushed to bypass intermediaries entirely. The climax came when silence failed. A delayed message triggered a cascade of withdrawals and contract terminations that no one had intended. The brokers had not planned collapse, but their control over timing amplified fear faster than they could contain it. The market moved without them, violently and blindly. London faced an uncomfortable realization. A system built on confidence cannot survive when uncertainty is deliberately curated. Silence, once a strategic asset, had become systemic risk, and the city stood forced to decide whether information could remain privately timed or whether transparency had become a necessity for survival. The resolution arrived not with punishment, but with exposure. In the wake of the market freeze, London's institutions moved to reduce the power of silence by narrowing the space in which it could operate. New expectations emerged, not to speak constantly, but to speak predictably. Timelines were defined, disclosures standardized. Silence lost its ambiguity. Brokers adapted or vanished. Those who relied on calibrated pauses found their leverage fading as markets demanded clearer signals. Others reinvented themselves as facilitators rather than gatekeepers, recognizing that trust now depended on consistency more than discretion. The city did not outlaw silence, but removed its ability to move markets unchecked. Markets responded with relief. Volatility eased. Confidence returned slowly, anchored not in whispers, but in reliable cadence. Traders learned to distinguish meaningful delays from neutral ones. Uncertainty remained, but it no longer felt engineered. London absorbed the lesson deeply. Information is not just content. It is timing, context, and expectation. When any one of those becomes privately controlled, stability erodes. The city did not reject intermediaries, but it redefined their role. Influence shifted from withholding to coordination. Looking back, the episode revealed a quiet truth. Markets fear emptiness more than bad news. Silence invites imagination, and imagination often runs toward disaster. A financial system thrives not when everything is known, but when the unknown behaves predictably. London learned to tame silence not by eliminating it, but by refusing to let it dominate perception. Subscribe to join the journey. The